All right, it is time to get started. Um, we're not too hard and fast on the schedule, but we are trying to stick to it as much as we can today. Um, welcome. Some of you were not here last night, so welcome to those who have arrived today. We're glad you made it safely. I know the weather's been kind of crazy, even as the spring has begun. So just some quick preliminaries. I did these last night, but I'll do them again today. For those of you who have arrived today, if you need a schedule, there's a stack of copies here on the front table as you come in the main doors if you want to take one with you today so you know what the schedule is. One thing I did fail to mention last night, what's also there on the main table in the basket with the mask are these nifty little bookmarks that my wife took the time to make. They have these. They have the verses we're looking at this weekend on them. So if you want one, they're right there by the schedules, the colorful ones. So you're welcome to take as many as you want of those. I was also asked to announce we do have breaks between speakers, and we also have a lunch break coming up at noon. But I was asked to announce that on the breaks, there's a table in the fellowship room with the checkered red tablecloth. There's goodies there that some of our members have provided that you're free to indulge in if you'd like during the breaks and, of course, during the lunch. And just looking down here at my paper, is there anything else I may have overlooked? Guy, go ahead. Yes, Maria Nichols, she's one of our members here. She's been battling cancer for several years, but most recently she had a heart attack while she was traveling up north. She was hospitalized. She's fine now. We were told last night that she's actually back home now here in her hometown in Price. So if you could just continue to keep her in prayers as well. Anything else? All right. At this time, we'll have our opening prayer by my father-in-law, and then our brother Nathan Barton will lead us in a song. Then I will introduce our first speaker for the morning. Dad, go ahead.
Bow with me, please. Father in heaven, we're so very grateful for this day that you've given us, that we can come together here and we can sing songs of praise to you and that we can hear from your word. We're grateful, Father, for all these people who have traveled some a great distance to be here. We're grateful, Father, for Nathan and for Debbie who have traveled all the way from Rapid City to be with us to participate in our retreat this weekend. Pray, Father, that you would bless us, that we might get a great deal out of our gathering. We're grateful, Father, for the news that Maria is home and doing much better. We're grateful for the encouragement that she gives each one of us. Be with us, Father, as we go through this day. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
If you'd like to mark number 619, we'll sing that after our brother Mark's lesson. Number 619, A New Creature. And then turn over to 589, an old familiar song that I think goes along well with what he's going to be bringing us, especially the second verse. But number 589, Leaning on the Everlasting Arms. What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arms. What a blessedness, what a peace is mine, leaning on the everlasting arms.
our first speaker for this weekend is Mr. Mark Fitzgerald, who's sitting right over here. And also, if you weren't here last night, he did celebrate his 35th birthday yesterday, so make sure and wish him a happy birthday when you have a chance. Mark and I and his wife Jackie have been close friends for some time, so I always feel privileged that he's able to come and speak at our retreat. Also, I asked he and the rest of our speakers just to send me a short little biography, because if you don't know them, it just helps you to get to know them a little bit. Mark was born as March 31st, obviously, because that was his birthday yesterday. He was born in 1988. One thing I did not know about Mark that he sent me, he's actually one of 3 triplets. Now, what sets that apart is, it says here, he was born a month before his brother and sister, but still triplets. He also graduated from Oklahoma Christian University, and he also attended and graduated from the Bear Valley Bible Institute of Denver. And he's been working with the congregation in Tooele since 2015. So we're glad to have that congregation represented here, not only by Mark and his wife, but we also have Miss Penny Shields over here who also worships at his congregation. So I won't take any more of the time of Mark's time, so brother, come up and preach the word.
David's taller than me. So good to be back with y'all after 3 or 4 years. We had COVID, and then I was sick 1 year, and so it is good to see you all again. You know, when thinking of moral excellence, we not only want to avoid the wrong, we also, of course, want to choose to do the good. But further, we don't want to just choose the good out of ritual, but of course from a sincere intent of the heart. However, I wanted to look at morality more in general this morning. I wrote down a chunk of these books I read, so it's mostly their notes this morning, but I found them enlightening. You know, right and wrong concern what I ought or ought not to do. As one author mentioned, well, it's a good thing to become a chemist, but that doesn't imply that it's therefore my duty to become a chemist, for it is also good to become a firefighter, or a diplomat, or a doctor, and I cannot become all of them. Of course, the moral argument, it points to the existence of a being that is the ultimate good. Where did morality come from? This sense that we all have of I ought to do this or that. God, of course, is the ultimate source of morality in the world. Without him, how can we say there is morality? You know, it's unfortunate, lots of people, they want to say, well, it's all relative. You know, they want to say, well, let's just do it the way we want to. Aren't we just born into a religion and therefore everybody has their own morality, they'll say. You know, the Greeks had Zeus and the Middle East has Allah, and Hindus in India have several gods and ways to think of. Many would argue, well, aren't they all just right? They're just born within their culture. And so the skeptic will try and say, well, they're all wrong, so the reasoning is, well, surely Christianity must be wrong as well. But we, of course, know that's not true. Just because the grammatically incorrect comic book says the world is round doesn't mean that this supports the theory that the earth is flat. As this guy mentioned, that is to say, the claim might be that since our moral beliefs have been instilled in us through society or biology, whatever folks might try and say, those beliefs are false, and so objective moral values do not exist. Such reasoning is false, since a belief could be true, regardless of how it came to be held, you know. Again, the skeptic will often try and say, well, isn't it all just like Zeus or like Allah, and therefore they're all wrong, so isn't God wrong as well? But indeed, without an objective moral standard, there's nothing absolutely right or wrong. Yet we all know, for example, that love is superior to hate and courage is better than cowardice. You know, there's no land where murder is a virtue and gratitude a vice. That goes for wherever, the Middle East and North America. Think of a country where people were admired for running away in battle, or where a man felt proud to double-cross all the people who had been kindest to him. You might as well try to imagine a country where 2 + 2 make 5. It just doesn't happen. We all know the ought to do or ought not to do. One may not think stealing is wrong, given a situation, and again, folks try to make the situational ethics argument until someone steals from you, and now we know it's wrong. Oh, okay. Obviously, we don't like stealing. It made me think of Proverbs 6, verse 30 and 31. It says there, "Men do not despise a thief if he steals to satisfy himself when he is hungry, but when he is found, he must repay sevenfold." At the end of the day, it was wrong for the man to steal, even though he was starving to death. Is starving and going to heaven worse than being filled and going to hell? Well, of course, we know the answer to that. Kind of humorously, how these authors put it, people who adhere to subjective morality would say one should never say never, or we should always avoid the word always. Relativists are absolutely sure there are no absolutes, and of course we get the point there, see the problem. Even relativists don't want their spouses to be only relatively faithful. All right, you can kind of try and convince them with the moral argument that way. Indeed, we have moral meaninglessness without God. We have to have God if we're going to have morality. There's no other way to do it. From a merely naturalistic perspective, because the human race will eventually cease to exist, well then, it makes no ultimate difference whether it ever did exist. That is, without God. Who ultimately cares if we found the cure for cancer or ended world hunger? The sun will eventually supernova, and that'll be it, if there is no God. Meaning itself is questioned in life. The universe does not really acquire meaning just because I happen to give it one. Suppose I give the universe one meaning and you give the universe another. Well then, who's right? As someone said, if the existence of God is denied, then one is landed in complete moral relativism, so that no act, regardless how dreadful or heinous, can be condemned by the atheist. And they, of course, like trying to condemn us for, aren't you Christians such bad people for killing the Canaanites or something? Well, they don't have any legs to stand on if God doesn't exist. Everything goes if there is no God. This guy gave kind of a fun example. There once was an astronaut marooned on an asteroid in outer space. He had with him 2 vials, one containing poison and the other a potion that would make him live forever. Realizing his predicament, he gulped down the poison. But then, to his horror, he realized he had swallowed the other vial. He had swallowed the one that made him live forever. He was cursed to exist forever, a meaningless, unending life. It's not just morality man needs. If life is to be ultimately significant, he needs God and morality. And if God does not exist, then he has neither. Without God, we don't have morality to begin with. In a world without a divine lawgiver, there can be no objective right or wrong, only our cultural suppositions and subjective judgments. This means that it would be impossible to condemn war, oppression, or crime as evil, nor can one praise brotherhood, equality, or love as good. Indeed, to say that the Holocaust was wrong is to say that it was wrong, even though the Nazis who carried it out thought it was right, and indeed it would still be wrong, even if the Nazis had won World War II and brainwashed us all into thinking it was the right thing to do. Sadly, at Auschwitz, it was as though there existed a world in which all 10 commandments were reversed. Thou shalt kill, thou shalt lie, thou shalt steal. Mankind had never seen such hell. But if God does not exist, then there is no morality, and all the evil acts of men go unpunished, and all the sacrifices of good men go unrewarded. Well, indeed, morality does exist. Don't we all have this deep-seated sense of obligation that we ought to help people? Indeed, we all do. That a moral standard has been prescribed on the minds of human beings points, of course, to the moral law prescriber. It had to come from somewhere. It's not just something culturally relative. Look with me over to Romans chapter 2, just to say we opened the Bible once. Romans 2, verse 14 and 15 here. We think of the Jews having the 10 Commandments, and of course they did. But what about the Gentiles? Romans 2, verse 14 and 15. It says, "For when Gentiles, who do not have the law, instinctively perform the requirements of the law, these, not having the law, are a law to themselves, and that they show the work of the law written on their hearts." They knew right and wrong, having themselves been made in God's image, just as the Jews were, even though not having the 10 Commandments and Mosaic law, this type thing. As this guy mentioned, the moral law is not always the standard by which we treat others, but it is nearly always the standard by which we expect others to treat us. If there's no moral law, why be tolerant? As America tries to preach, they try to preach both. They try to preach tolerance and no moral law. Tolerating evil, of course, would be unloving. Are we just to keep tolerating the murderer? Eventually justice has to catch up to them. We can't just tolerate everything and anything. One might claim that lying isn't wrong, but watch how morally outraged they get when you lie to them, especially if it's about money. Very true. I wanted to throw in just a quick thought. Do animals have morality? It seems to be something that pops up. Well, a hawk that seizes a fish from the sea, it kills it, but it does not murder it. And another hawk that seizes the fish from the talons of the first takes it, but he does not steal it. Further, it is clear what is meant when it is said a person is just, but bewildering, without any people on earth. You don't have zebras in a jury box and an antelope and lion weighing the rightness or wrongness of hunting for breakfast. It just doesn't happen. Our rule for Winks is she can't climb on the bed. She climbs everywhere else. But she can't climb on the bed, and maybe your rule is, your dog can't climb on the bed. There's no right or wrong between the animals. There's no morality or sin there. But indeed, God must exist for morality to exist. We all know the ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus there in the 200s BC, and he kind of gave the famous argument that skeptics and atheists like to give. Well, God is all-powerful, and God is all good, and yet evil exists. So how can this be? The thinking goes that, God is either all-powerful but not all-loving, or he's all-loving but not all-powerful, or God is neither all powerful nor all loving, and that's, of course, the argument the atheist would try to make. But God's acts are good because he is the ultimate good. Only goodness can flow from him. God exists and evil exists, so God must have a reason for evil. God is all powerful, but as we know, it was man's free will that led to evil. Certainly we know evil exists. Sin is the only intrinsic evil. It is not evil that evil exists, and every evil comes because of free will. Satan, of course, is blameworthy. Mankind is the ones blameworthy, not God. People have pondered, is pain evil? Again, I think of the skeptic trying to bash God at every turn he can. Is pain evil? Well, what of a mother spanking her child? You're just trying to correct them, show them the right way. There needs to be pain in order to appreciate pleasure. You need work to appreciate vacation. Pain, of course, has the ability to challenge knowledge and learn. We can develop spiritually. It presents obstacles for us to overcome, and we're, of course, better off for it. God had to create a world where man can't be immediately in his presence, but neither can man be hopelessly far off from God. Thus, pain becomes a necessity. Non-believers in the world walk about wanting to find purpose and meaning, but of course it can't be found without God. Human suffering is caused by many things, carelessness or selfishness. Maybe it's just time and chance in the wrong place at the wrong time. Living in a physical world, man is subject to injury and therefore suffering. We think of bricks can be used for good. You can build a house. It can also be used for bad. You can go murder somebody with a brick. Water is essential for life, but one may also drown in it. We kind of see a dual nature there with just living in this physical world. There's also, of course, benefits to suffering. It allows a life of self-denial. It allows mankind to see their need to cry out to God, to grow in moral character, and for us Christians to bring the wayward back to God. Many would ponder, can't morality just come about by biology and our massive brains or something of this nature? Can't it just kind of naturally happen? We know that physical materials in and of themselves don't have morality. As this guy mentioned, how much does hate weigh? Is there an atom for love? What's the chemical composition of the murder molecule? Well, of course, there's no such thing. It's something apart from physical things we see and touch. Morality cannot just merely either be an instinct, because we all have competing instincts, and something else often tells us to ignore the stronger instinct in order to do something more noble. Are species helping one another only based on survival? Then what do you do with people committing suicide or soldiers giving their lives honorably in battle? People like saying, it's all for the greater good. Is that Mother Teresa's ends or Stalin's ends? They would both say it's for the greater good. Did morality come about and evolve because of genetics and our massive brains? As this guy put it, at best that would show how moral values are discovered, but would not show how those values are invented. Mathematics existed regardless of how I come to know them. It didn't create morality or something. It was a thing, and we just discovered it, or might be the case. As we know, in order to denounce God's actions recorded in the Bible as morality, one must presuppose that objective moral values exist. I liked a few of these. There's 6 or 7 of these confusions that the author listed that I liked. Confusion number 1, morality versus changing behavior. You know, what people do is subject to change, but what they ought to do is not. You know, we think of somebody saying, oh, premarital sex, well, get with it, it's the 21st century. Murder, oh, get with it, it's the 21st century. Well, it just doesn't work. You know, it was wrong today, and it was wrong 6,000 years ago. Confusion number 2, morality versus changing perceptions. You know, the perception of a moral situation is relative, you know, thinking people are witches or something, but the moral values involved in the situation are not. You know, murder has always been wrong and always will be wrong. This guy gave the example. Hindus revere cows, thinking they're souls of the deceased, and Americans eat them. Yet, what appears to be a moral difference is actually an agreement. We both believe it's wrong to eat grandma. It's true, you know. So it looks like it's contradiction on the face of it, but of course we have morality there at the end. Confusion number 3, morality versus changing situations. Suppose there are 5 people trying to survive on a life raft designed only for 4, and we see the predicament. If one person isn't thrown overboard, then everyone will die. Well, you know, if there is no morality, it doesn't matter. Throw everybody overboard. You know, if there is no God, it doesn't matter. Confusion number 4, morality versus changing cultures. With countries' greetings, you know, some it is a kiss, with others it's a hug, still others it's a handshake or a bow. What should be done is common to all cultures, the greeting, but how it should be done differs, you know, so lots of these confusions that pop up. Number 5, morality versus moral disagreements, as this guy put it. You know, is abortion good or is it murder? Should we protect life or, as they say, allow liberty? We, of course, know a baby has its own body, its unique genetic code, blood type, and gender. Yet even if there were doubt as to when life begins, the benefit of the doubt should be given to protecting life. Reasonable people don't shoot unless they're absolutely sure they won't kill an innocent human. I'm sure we all know Ronald Reagan when he once said, "I've noticed all those in favor of abortion have already been born." You know, but again, just because there's disagreement doesn't mean there isn't a correct answer. You know, and folks try and take us down that rabbit hole. Finally, confusion number 6, morality's end versus relative means. You know, we often hear, oh, do the ends justify the means? Well, no. You know, ending with 90% of humanity happier by enslaving the 10%, of course, isn't good. Or we might take an example of helping the poor. We all know that's the right thing to do. Democrats want government to help the poor. Republicans want more economic opportunity to help the poor. Yet notice that both want to help the poor. You know, that morality didn't change. Indeed, right and wrong are realities. We have every day to decide how we want to live life. Let's be sure to keep on living the way God has called us to.
Sing number 619. David, who selected the prayer? Timmy Collins, okay. Number 619, A New Creature. I think it's a song most of us will know. Buried with Christ, my blessed Redeemer, dead to the old life of folly and sin. Satan may call, the world may entreat me, there is no voice that answers within. Dead to the world, to voices that call me, living anew, obedient but free. Dead to the joys that once did enthrall me, yet 'tis not I, Christ liveth in me. Dead unto sin, alive through the Spirit, risen with him from the gloom of the grave. All things are new, and I am rejoicing in his great love, his power to save. Dead to the world, to voices that call me, living anew, obedient but free. Dead to the joys that once did enthrall me, yet not his I, Christ liveth in me. Sin hath no more its cruel dominion, walking in newness of life I am free. Glorious life of Christ my Redeemer, whom he so richly shareth with me. Dead to the world, to voices that call me, living anew, obedient but free. Dead to the joys that once did enthrall me, yet 'tis not I, Christ liveth in me.
Please bow with me. Holy and righteous Father in heaven, creator of this entire universe, every single atom you saw before it was created, and you breathed it into existence. You gave us everything that we have. You gave us our morality, our views of right and wrong, or that instincts. You gave that to us so that way we can choose the right thing, and that is to be in a relationship with you. And we thank you so much for that blessing. We pray that you would be with each and every one of us here. Help us to make those right calls. Help us to love you, to worship you, and to live our lives entirely devoted to you. In your Son's most holy